Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson and I'm the legal government correspondent, and today my guest is a person from the Small Business Administration, Eric Ness.
Yes.
Eric, welcome to the show.
Yep, good to be here.
Now, Eric, I understand you're the district director for the Small Business Administration for the entire Western District, is that right?
Actually, for the whole state of Wisconsin.
Okay, and so tell us a little bit about your background. You've been with the SBA, I know, since 1990. What did you do before that?
Before that, I worked with actually a development company, Impact 7, up in the Elmina, Turtle Lake area. So that's where I kind of learned about SBA loans. They had a 504 company up there. And I packaged a few loans and worked on some tax incremental financing and community block grants. So it really gave me a nice knowledge of some of the programs to help small businesses.
So you've kind of had your early years here in northwestern Wisconsin then.
Yes, yeah. I actually went to a 2-year campus in Barron County, Wisconsin, or in Rice Lake. It's Barron County campus. And then because University of Minnesota is a little closer than Madison, I ended up going to the University of Minnesota. But my son goes to University of Wisconsin, so there's a little bit of a rivalry there.
There you go. Well, now, with regard to your training, what was your degree in?
I had an undergrad in agricultural engineering. I grew up on a farm. Actually had my own business for the first 10 years. I sold pumpkin squash and drove them into town and sold them off the back of a truck. And actually,
where was that farm?
In the Cumberland area by Silver Lake. It's between Cumberland and Rice Lake. Actually, my grandmother drove me in because I couldn't drive. So, and that's when I learned that she said, since I'm driving you in, I need to buy her lunch. So I was having my first employee issue that I wasn't quite prepared for. But it really gave me a kind of a neat kind of experience there. Then I went on with the farm background, and I liked the engineering. I went and got an ag engineering degree from the University of Minnesota. And then from there, I went to Dallas, Texas, and received an MBA, a Master's in Business, from Southern Methodist University.
Okay. So that's your education and training, kind of some background. Now that you've been with the Small Business Administration, I'm just going to use the initials SBA. I think everyone knows what the SBA is. For about 23 years. People have heard of the SBA. My brother, who does government contracting in the defense area, knows a lot about the SBA. But why don't we tell the folks, what does the SBA do?
Well, I think the best way to kind of describe the SBA is our 3 C's. We do capital, so we do loans, and we work with local lenders, banks, credit unions, micro lenders to try to get capital to small businesses so they can start and grow their businesses. So that's one aspect. Of course, the federal contracting is another aspect where 23% of all federal contracts are to go to small business. So our big push is to try to get small business into the federal contracting arena. We have a couple designations under that, which is our small disadvantaged business, and that has a 5% goal. Our hub zone has a 3% goal, and that's historically underutilized business zones. And then we have our women and service-disabled veterans. So women have a 5% goal, and so do service-disabled veterans. So I spend time in the lending area, and then I spend time in the contracting area. And then our last area, or our last C, is our counseling area, and that's where we fund the University of Wisconsin, and every 4-year campus has something called the Small Business Development Centers, and they're there to counsel people about going into business, growing their businesses. A lot of them have classes. The ones we have here, there's one at River. Every 4-year campus at the University of Wisconsin has an SBDC. So River Falls has one for this area. And of course, our SBDC, we have one in Eau Claire and in Menominee. So those are there to help people go into business. Then we have something called a women's business center. And Western Dairyland in Eau Claire is our women's business center, helping women entrepreneurs to start and grow their business. And then we have something called SCORE, which is Counselors to America's Small Business. And those are folks that volunteer their time to meet one-on-one with businesses, maybe do some classes to help businesses, start business. And then also, it's a good opportunity where people who are in business and have some questions, they can run it by somebody else who's been in business or is volunteering their time. I know I had when I was with the development company, I was managing a hardware store. Didn't really know what I was doing in the hardware store business, called SCORE. One of their representatives came out who had been in the hardware business and kind of walked through the store with me and gave me some recommendations. So that's really a really nice resource. They also have some really, they have an online counseling program where you basically can email questions, and they have counselors all over the nation that can email you back on those. So I think that's pretty cool. And then, of course, our last is we have our online training program. We have about 117 courses online, or classes online, which kind of goes through, you know, the financing area, federal contracting area, you know, cash flow area, and it has a lot of success stories. Like Allen Edmund Shoes was a success story in Wisconsin. We did an SBA loan to them. Of course, they've grown and are really great in the shoe store, in the shoe market. So it's kind of nice to take a look at some of those success stories.
All right. Well, the SBA is, though, a federal agency, is that correct? So it's funded from Washington, D.C.
Right.
And we've heard a lot about these budget talks and sequester and cuts to budgets. How much of your programs, because you've mentioned, you know, the capital, you get into lending, the contracting, and the counseling, how much are those expenditures recouped by fees that are charged, or by, you know, other fees, I guess, is the only other, you know, way that I can think of recovering those expenses for the federal government, or is it, you know, 50-50?
Well, our lending program, the small businesses pay a fee to get our guarantee program, so it's a very small portion of the whole lending program. Last year in the state of Wisconsin, we did $716 million just in our state, and helped out 1,739 loans. Of that, 48 were just from St. Croix County. So our lending probably about a 0.5% would go into each loan we make. And of course, the guarantee program, basically you pay the guarantee on the SBA portion. So typically, our SBA loans can go up to $5 million. And we guarantee 85% up to $150,000, so it would only be the 85% of the 150, or we can go up to $5 million, and then it's the 75% of the $5 million, because our guarantee only goes up from $150,000 up to $5 million is 75% guarantee. So the local lender is guaranteed by 75%. So
I see. So if it's 85 or 75, the rest is guaranteed by the bank.
The rest is the bank's portion. So
banks, all right. Well, let's also a pretty basic definition. What qualifies as a small business?
Well, we've made some changes on that, and actually part of the jobs bill increased the size of what a small business from our lending perspective is. So it's basic, from a small business loan perspective, it can be $15 million, less than $15 million in net worth, and less than $5 million average for the last 2 years in net income. That's from our loan perspective. Okay. On our contracting side, and you can use the contracting on our loan side too, it really depends on which industry they're in. And basically, the industries are dictated by the North American Industry Classification System. So basically, from a manufacturing type businesses, it's less than 500 employees. So
regardless of the revenue,
right.
If they have 499, they qualify.
Correct.
Okay.
In a manufacturing area. So, and that's 75% of all manufacturing. But what I would really suggest, and you can get on our website, sba.gov, figure out which NAICS code you are in, because sometimes businesses may be small in one industry, but not small in another, especially in the contracting area. So it's always good to take a look at what is a small business in the federal contracting area to see what qualifies.
Okay. So yeah, before we went on camera, you had several categories, and that's why people need to do their own research.
Like general building and heavy construction, $33.5 million in sales. Special trade construction contractors, $14 million in sales. So you really have to know the NAICS code that you're in.
Okay. So that's for the capital, and you talked about the guarantee part of it that the SBA does. Well, what brought you to Hudson today?
Well, what we're doing is we're meeting with lenders in Hudson and talking to them about our SBA loan programs, because when businesses come in, they want they want some assistance, and lenders want to figure out how to give them that assistance. And so understanding our lending program is one of the big things that we want lenders to do, so they're in a good position to help small businesses. So one of our programs is called the SBA 504 program, and we were promoting that today. And that program helps businesses. It's typically for new purchase of equipment, new land, new construction, building and equipment. So it's basically new fixed assets. And the way that program works is a local lender can do 50%, and then the SBA does 40%, and then the local business can come in with 10%. What the advantage is we give the local lender who comes in with a 50% a first collateral position, and SBA takes a second collateral position. But that 40% is really important, I believe, now, because what we do is we take, and those loans can go up to $5 million, or for energy savings and energy savings and manufacturing up to $5.5 million. So, you know, we're talking, it could be a $13.5 million project. That 40%, or SBA's say $5 million, can be sold on the secondary market. It is sold on the secondary market, and the interest rate is fixed. So this is really important right now, as people are expecting interest rates to go up, that if a company who makes builds a building or buys a number of equipment can now fix that $5 million or whatever that 40% is for 10 or 20 years, depending on if it's the useful life. That really reduces some of their risk levels. So that's one of the programs we're talking about. Some of the others is called 7A, and it's not real good marketing terms, but what it is that's the guarantee program up to $5 million, where we actually guarantee a local lender. And one of the programs we've just rolled out is our loan size went from $2 million to $5 million. And so, as you see, you know, just in Wisconsin, we did $716 million this year, or last year, for a full year. And for the first 4 months of this year, our year starts on October 1st, we've done about $250,000. So we're on track to do more than what we did last year. But one of the areas that I've really tried to focus on is doing the smaller loans, the loans up to $350,000. And if you're a lender and you have to do the same paperwork for a $4 million loan as you do for a $200,000 loan, you probably will want to do more $4 million and not a less $200,000 or $100,000 loan. So what we've done is we've actually come up with a new loan program called Small Loan Advantage, which basically we're credit scoring it, and where the lender can know if it's an SBA approval at their desk through our E-Tran program. So then when they put the less document, we lower this to like a 2-page documentation. They know that they have an SBA approval. And if it doesn't score, they can still send it in regular 7A. But what we're trying to do is encourage smaller loans to get done. You know,
streamlining the smaller loans and decreasing the waiting time to hear a word on it. Okay.
So that's one of the programs. And what we've saw is since we've started doing this marketing, actually, I think we've done 72 in Wisconsin since October 1st. It was just rolled out last June, and actually Wisconsin is leading the nation in the usage of that program. So we're happy that lenders are using it. I'm trying to get out and make sure all the lenders know about it, so hopefully we can give a lot more opportunities to small businesses, because small businesses are our job creators, and we need to get them the resources.
Absolutely. Well, how many employees do you have in the SBA in Wisconsin then?
I have 12.
That's it.
That's it. So I'm a little streamlined. But yeah, we're not only we're small for an agency, but yeah, I have 12 people.
So a lot of dollars at stake, though. I mean,
right.
If you're increasing the loans from $2 million to $5 million,
right?
But what you try to do is have those 12 employees are covering different parts of the state, I presume,
right?
And they build relationships with these banks. Tell me, you know, one of the things about this recession is that people were saying they've dropped the cost of money to virtually nothing, made it easy for the banks to get more money, but because of the recession and how they were burned on the residential real estate part, the banks weren't lending the money. So are some of these newer programs you're talking about trying to stimulate that lending and get that going, because they recognize that when small businesses succeed and we get family-sustaining jobs, that will end up picking up the rest of the economy?
Yeah, that's the big point. probably 5 years ago, we were doing about $450 million a year in Wisconsin. 2 years ago, I did $835 million, but that was because we were paying some of the fees and there was a 90% guarantee. This last year with $716 million is still a lot higher than we were doing historically. And of course, the lenders, I've talked to a lot of the agency or the associations for the lenders, the community bankers, the Wisconsin lenders, and they like that guarantee program, especially it helps them with their regulators to have that guarantee in place. And what it helps, that 75% or 85% guarantee helps them, to justify their lending. And actually, if they wanted to, you can actually sell that on the secondary market. And some small businesses are wanting the lenders to do it to fix those rates. And it's really about, these are low rates, and we're trying to figure out how to
give us some idea. What kind of low rates?
Well, for the 504, we were selling that between 4% and 5%. So that's fixed for 20 years. So that's a really good rate. And 10, 15 years ago, these rates are phenomenal. So that's kind of the rates we're kind of shooting for. Maybe a little bit higher on the 7A, but if you can lock in at 6% or something for that a long time, I think you're in pretty good position.
So you're talking about $716 million, I think you said, in gross loans last year.
Correct.
And I just want to correct something. I think you might have misspoke, but you said 250,000. You meant 250 million you've done already this year.
Yep, 250 million just this year to 574 small businesses. So.
Oh, okay. And how many of those were in St. Croix County?
Last year we did 48 in St. Croix County. So far this year I've done 13. So.
Okay, well, we're not even a quarter of the way done with the year, only a sixth of the way into the year. And so you're looking to increase that. And is this where the focus is then, on getting the money out and the capital and trying to stimulate that movement between banks and small businesses? Right.
That's our big push. One of the big pushes for businesses that are actually doing exporting. Our regular program is 85 up to 150 and 75 up to 5 million. But for exporting, we're actually guaranteeing the local lenders up to 90%. So basically to try to encourage a lender, because exporting naturally is for a lot of community banks, they may not do a lot of exporting. So if we raise that guarantee up to 90%, we're hopeful that that'll encourage a lot more lending in that area too. So.
Okay, well, and the counseling is kind of obvious because this comes down to education and training.
Right.
And people can go to school, it's just like law school. You learn a lot in law school, but you learn even more once you're out in the field doing it. And for business, they don't really have the luxury of do-overs. I mean, if they're going to make a new venture, they need to have the advice and have as many of the risks identified ahead of time. So is that kind of what you try to do with the counseling?
Right. That's our SBDC, of course, are located on our 4-year campuses, so they're there to help bring in that knowledge base to help small businesses. Our SCORE counselors, as I said, I ran into that same problem. I've got a problem and I don't know how to fix it, and so it's free counseling, so you can access them, and that's what I utilize. So, and then, always take a look at our online courses. There's a lot of things. I mean, if you're looking at federal contracting, you say, well, I want to understand a little bit more about this federal contracting arena. We've got a number of classes that'll take you right through and talk about, working with and being a federal contractor.
Does that really impact Wisconsin much? I had mentioned my brother, and he's a federal contractor out in the state of Washington where they have military bases and so forth. Not as many military bases here in Wisconsin. And we hear about the outflow of federal tax dollars. We don't get a lot coming in. So tell me about that contracting part of it in Wisconsin. What would be some examples?
Well, we have 2 huge federal contractors in Wisconsin that use a lot of small businesses to support, and we have more than that actually, but the 2 that have just come to mind right off the top of my head are Oshkosh Trucks in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and they use a lot of small businesses to supply their operation for building trucks. Then we have Marinette Marine, who are building the Navy ships up in Marinette. So there's a lot of small businesses helping, and when you get a large federal contract, they take a look at, so what are you going to do for small business, and how much is small business, how much is women-owned small businesses going do work on this contract? And how about a small disadvantaged business and hub zone business?
What's the difference between a small disadvantaged business and a disabled veteran business?
A service disabled vet is a veteran owned, but it's a service disabled through the VA, so they make the determination on the service disability. Small disadvantaged business is a business that is socially, where you show that you're socially and economically disadvantaged. Like like the minority population would be socially disadvantaged, and then we have an economic disadvantage that people, which I think is under a net worth under $750,000.
But these are additional classifications that you need to qualify for, right, in order to get that program. But you don't have to necessarily fit into minority status, woman, or service disabled vet to get this help with contracting.
Right, and 23% of all small businesses, or 23% of all federal contracts are to go to small businesses. So.
Okay, and that's tried to increase over the years?
Yeah,
or have we seen the reverse?
Well, it's a challenge, and one of the things that we're promoting, and actually some of the new legislation is promoting a mentor-protege, where say your small business is doing federal contracts, but we will actually let you work with a large business to mentor you, to help you grow your business, so that you're able to do some of these federal contracts or the larger federal contracts, because frankly they are challenging. There's a lot of paperwork to do, and there's a lot of standards that you have to attain. So what we've done is we've had under our small disadvantaged business 8A, we had mentor-protege, where an A business could be mentored by a larger business and help them grow. We've now expanded that to small business, to our hub zone, historically underutilized business zones, and to our women-owned and our service-disabled veterans. So we're hopeful that that'll help the businesses in those areas grow too. And I think it's a great opportunity. You know, we talk a lot about the lending side, but the contracting side is probably even more important, because that helps you pay the loans back.
Right, right. So with the lending, it's talking about getting interest rates that are relatively low and locking them in, and then taking that risk over a period of time, giving some breathing room where the loan's not going to be called in a short period of time. Right.
Ours can be fixed, but a lot of them are variable. And of course, the rates at prime plus 3.25. I mean, the max is around 6%. So I mean, the interest rates have been at an all-time low. So businesses who have been able to get financing are getting some pretty good lower rate money.
Well, we've seen, what has it been, at least a 30-year drain on manufacturing, and particularly large manufacturers leaving this country and setting up in China and other countries. Are we seeing a reverse on that manufacturing side, and is it coming from the small businesses?
Well, it's interesting. About 3 years ago, I went to a manufacturing conference, and I had a manufacturer come up to me, and that was when our loan size was $2 million. And he said, basically, at that point, the SBA is irrelevant for manufacturers, which, you know, I heard. I didn't like hearing it, but, you know, that's what he said. And of course, over the last 2 years, when my loan size have went up to $5 million, the last 2 years, manufacturing has been my #1 industry where I've done most of my lending in the state of Wisconsin. And it's actually my #1 lending area this year. I think I've done about $50 million so far in the manufacturing market just in the first 4 months of this year.
Well, that's good to hear. But also we have the technological areas and entrepreneurs. I suppose talk about that.
Well, naturally, we do loans all across the board. And so one of the things that we have in the technology area is we have a grant program that we oversee, but the other federal agencies work through, called SBIR. They're research grants, and STTR, which is technology grants, which basically when agencies are looking for research in a specific area, they'll do grants, a phase 1 and a phase 2 grant to small businesses. A lot of times they're connected with university or doing some research to try to figure out how to solve a certain problem. So there's grant programs out there to help in those industries. So you have the phase 1 to kind of develop how are you going to solve this. Phase 2 is actually solving it. And then phase 3 actually how are you going to take it to commercialization.
Okay. Was there anything else that you want to talk about before we end the show with our viewers here?
Other things that we have, and you know, our big push is also on the micro lending program. We have a number of micro lenders around the state. Those are loans under $50,000. I think up here we have Impact 7 out of Elmina that does the micro lending. And we're, you know, our job is to get lenders or get small businesses to start and grow. So, you know, contact us, take a look at our website. A lot of what I've talked about, there's actually classes online where you can get more information on it and talk to our partners.
Okay. And you can also talk to professionals, like there's accountants and again, these smaller banks or more local banks also are knowledgeable about these programs.
Well, if you go on sba.gov/WI, which gets to the Wisconsin site, you can actually find lenders in your community or your area to do SBA loans. And on our website, I have a list of them. A lot of times, you know, you don't know who to contact, and so we've tried to put like our preferred lenders who can make decisions without the SBA's decision, or some of the lenders that do a lot with our Express program. I actually have the name of the person that you can contact right on our website, so you can talk to them. So that way they know our program.
So that's sba.gov,
yep.
and then /WI will
yep.
get them to the Wisconsin part.
Yep.
Very good. Well, Eric, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
And when you're back in Hudson again, stop by.
Sounds good. Thanks.
And thank you for joining us for another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal.